Okay. So I believe we can start now. Hi everyone, and welcome to this new online edition of the Professionals in International Trade event on financing global trade in the COVID era. First, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to the elders, both past, present, and emerging. My name is Alex Cohn, and I'm the current chair of Professionals in International Trade. And before we jump into the session, I'd like to just give you a few words about Professionals in International Trade. So we are an association that was founded in 2018 to support, connect, and educate individuals interested in international trade, investment, and international business in general. We have to date more than 400 members nationally, representing over 50 different trade organizations. And to date, we have organized a bit over 15 events. We also have a learning center on our website with useful online resources and insightful reports on various sectors and countries. We also aggregate a job board, regularly updated with opportunities from our members. And finally, we have implemented a new policy department to produce content on policy changes and related international trade topics. So now I'll hand over to my colleague Najib Lawand, who's our head of partnerships, who will give you more information about the agenda and speakers today, and who will moderate our panel discussion. Thank you, and I hope you'll enjoy the event.
Thank you, Alex, and I'm really looking forward to this event. I guess you can't be involved in global trade without thinking about money and the movement of money, making money, and in the end, running a business that will allow you to deliver the goods and services that consumers worldwide must need. So I'm also particularly excited because of the partnership that we have with World First on this webinar. It's an outstanding organization, and we're going to be hearing a little bit more about World First, and then drawing upon Matt's expertise through our Q&A. And I'm also excited about this session because we've got Dianne and Charith involved. Dianne, for anybody who's involved in export in Australia, and indeed in many other markets, will probably have either heard of, met, or learned from Dianne, as I did in the 90s when I did my export training course. So needless to say, I look up to Dianne and can't wait to hear from her. And Charith has been involved in the export finance space for quite a few years now. So I may actually introduce Dianne straight up. Dianne wears so many hats. You know, she consults, she trains. For the purposes of this forum, we will be focusing on her capacity as the chair of Export Council of Australia, and she there leads a very talented team that are focused on running export training, export events, celebrating the successes of exporters through the Export Awards, developing policy for, or informing policy for, and providing a voice for Australian exporters at a government level, and delivers some very important international market research and insights around Australian exporters. Dianne, would you like to share more about what the Export Council of Australia does?
Yes, thank you, Najib. I think you've covered a lot of the things, or mostly everything we do, but I'm very pleased to be here today and thank Professionals in Trade for inviting me to participate. The ECA is a peak membership body for companies involved in international business, and we have a long, proud history of supporting Australian international businesses. We've been doing that for a long time, well over 60 years. I'm very proud of that. We initially were called the Australian Institute of Export, and in 2013 we changed our name to the Export Australia. But we do a number of things. We develop international business skills. We build Australian business capacity. We conduct international market research, and we break down. What we really are proud of is trying to break down, or helping to break down, the barriers to trade, building global networks and informing trade policy. So we do a lot, as you mentioned, Najib, with skills development, capacity and capability building, and very proud to announce that overnight we launched a program with AusVeg for vegetable growers, and it's a new way of doing training from our perspective. It's an interactive program, and it's I'm very proud of it. I hope that it gets to be put out more extensively as we go forward in other areas of training that we do. We do a lot of work with Austrade. A couple of the research projects that we've done recently and the Australian International Business Survey. We've done that for about 5 years straight. We haven't done one this year, and I think it's obvious that the COVID was the reason we didn't do that. It doesn't really give a true picture of anything at this time in regards to Australia's international trade. We are doing other research in regards to COVID, and more on that will come out in our website and our newsletters. We've done some programs with IP Australia, some research which is being launched pretty soon, and that's about intellectual property and the way it's treated in various countries. And we've done a lot of work with Austrade on teaching and training under FTAs, and the recent FTAs with Peru and Hong Kong are part of that grouping of FTAs. So there's a lot of things we have. Policy is really important. The advocacy and talking to our members and getting their understanding of what they need, what they would like to see happen. We can't always go to government and say, do this. We're not in that position, obviously, but we can talk to different various areas of government. We can provide information. We can provide research and statistics to influence and hopefully encourage and enable government to make changes to support international trade as much as they can. I think I've covered a lot. There's a lot of things we do. We're very varied. Our Women Trading Globally program is a program that enables us to train women from overseas under a gender diversity agenda. And that has been something that I'm very, very proud of. There's so many wonderful women in different countries that have got the ability to really grow if they just have that helping hand. And we're very proud of that program. So thank you, Najib. I think that covers it for the moment.
Great. No, thank you. And actually, I was a guest speaker for one of those programs for the leaders from the Asian region, ladies coming
You have actually helped us quite a lot over different programs that we've done over the number of years, Najib. So thank you also.
Well, it's very important work that you do. Charith Amarasinghe is the Director of Business Development for New South Wales and ACT at the Export Finance of Australia. He's responsible for the development and execution of that organisation's business origination strategy for New South Wales and the ACT. Most important thing that he does, and which is why we're also keen to hear from Charith, is that he works very closely with businesses, with banks, with advisors, and everyone in the finance sphere, including government organisations, around providing tailored financial solutions that help exporters grow their sales and in some cases expand internationally. Charith, you want to share a little bit more about Export Finance of Australia?
Thanks, Najib. I thought you almost did a better job than me there. So as the Export Council of Australia, we too have been helping Australian exporters for an equally long time. So for those who may not have come across Export Finance Australia or EFIC in the past, we are the official export credit agency of Australia. Now, what does that mean? That means we are an Australian government-owned agency that provides a range of different financial solutions to Australian businesses that are engaged in export or export-related supply chain business activities. And I'll explain what those supply chain activities a bit later on. But we do have a unique mandate where our role is not to compete with the commercial banks or the private sector in general, but instead identify gaps in the market where the private sector or the commercial banks may not be fulfilling and then work with businesses to bridge those gaps. So as Najib rightly mentioned, we do work with the banks and other financiers due to that complementary role that we play to ultimately enable a suitable financial solution to a business that helps them either export a product or expand into an international market. So just very quickly, in terms of the types of businesses we help, obviously what we call traditional exporters of goods and services. So these are companies who either provide a product or service out of Australia. That could be through a traditional physical channel or a digital channel. We can also help companies who are part of an export supply chain. So these are companies who may not be exporting a product directly themselves, but provide a product or service that is essential to another company to export a final product. And then thirdly, we can also help companies who wish to expand into an international market. So some of the companies who may have a product or service that has a good track record here in Australia, and they need to set up a team overseas, whether that's actual sales office or setting up a distribution or warehouse capability. As long as they're not relocating out of Australia, we could potentially support those businesses as well. And more recently, we have also started supporting Australian tourism businesses that cater to the international tourism sector. So international tourism is an export because there's obviously money coming from overseas. So now we can help those businesses as well. So I might just stop there, Najib, and we'll come back to questions later.
All right, great. Thank you, Charith, and thank you for all the work that you're doing for exporters. Matt is the head of dealing and client relations at World First. So he leads and manages the World First Australia's corporate, e-commerce and private dealing desks, as well as the client relations team. Welcome to the panel, and again, really excited to have World First as a partner with professionals in trade on this very important topic. And at this point, Charith and I will take our videos off so that you can all clearly see the slides that Matt's going to share with us to better understand what World First does.
Perfect. Thanks for the introduction, Najib. It's a pleasure to be working with the professionals in international trade team and to be on the panel today with other leading experts in their respective fields. I'm also pleased to introduce World First as a partner of today's event, and I hope to give you all some insights into how we are helping our clients manage and navigate the unprecedented year of international trade that we're all facing. So a little bit about me, which Najib has already covered bits and pieces of. So I oversee the client-facing functions for all of Australia and New Zealand's active clients. And what we hope to do is look to reduce, simplify, and add a valued service to a sector traditionally not covered by the big four banks. A little bit about today's agenda. So I'd like to walk you through a journey, the history of World First. We'll then take a quick look at the main drivers to currency markets and trends that we've seen so far this year. And then we'll look to go through some products and strategies to help mitigate and manage foreign exchange volatility. So World First, we're a faster, easier, safer, and cheaper way to do business globally. We achieve this by utilizing a global network of tier 1 banks and financial institutions, which help us make international payments faster and more secure. We pride ourselves on the customer journey and the customer experience, and we do this through 2 channels, one of them being offline through a dedicated dealer service, and also clients have the option to transact online through a 24/7 platform. Where we are market leading in this space is in and around our transparent price offering, which we actually brought to market in the middle of last year. We're really pleased to bring this to the market. It gives confidence and trust back into the foreign exchange space, where traditionally banks and brokers make most of their money by hiding the hidden costs behind their foreign exchange fees. Our clients communicate with us quite regularly that they're pleased to know the exact costs of every single one of the transfers that they make with us. And our introductory pricing is capped at 0.5 or 0.5%. And dependent on your annual volume, our price can come down to as low as 0.15%. So a quick history about World First. So we were founded in the UK 16 years ago by two ex-Citi bankers who wanted to innovate the foreign exchange space for SMEs. This little office in a basement in the UK led to a second regional office in Sydney, which is where I'm located today, and then rapid expansion into Asia and beyond, where we now have 10 global regional offices, all up and running, helping clients all around the world. In 2018, we launched our World Account product solution for SMEs, which I'll go into a little bit more detail later on in this presentation. And excitingly, in 2019, we joined the Ant Group family, which we believe puts us in a very strong place to launch our product and technology into the future. So a quick look into how the Australian dollar has fared against our most traded currency pairs in 2020. As you can see by the visual graphs, there has been significant volatility across each of these currency pairs and also pairs not shown on this. So the Aus-US pair has seen a range of movement of 34% this calendar year. Aus-Euro has seen a range of 24% movement, and Sterling-Aus has seen a range of 16% of volatility. So what's most likely to impact markets moving forward? Well, the unprecedented first half to 2020 looks set to continue to the back end of the year. There are a number of key factors that are currently driving markets, and there are a few key dates on the horizon that will definitely add to the volatility that we've seen so far this year. So starting with COVID, each day traders, governments, and market participants are looking for insights and news to see what developments have been made in the race to bring a COVID-19 vaccine to the market. The lead manufacturers, Moderna, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca, are all the manufacturers leading the race to bring the vaccine to the market before the end of the year. Doing so will put risk-based currencies like the Australian dollar in a good place to take advantage of better market sentiment. Moving on to Brexit talks, the negotiation stalemate between Britain and the EU has only intensified recently, with the hard deadline of October the 15th not too far away. Increasingly complex legal and parliamentary challenges seemingly making a deal an increasingly unlikely event. Shortly after the Brexit negotiations end, the markets will look to the US elections and see what developments have been made there. The date that is scheduled for the US polls is the 3rd of November, so also not too far away. And the main points of conjecture around the US election will be around what fiscal package can be agreed through the House and the Senate, and if it can be agreed, how that will actually be distributed and allocated amongst businesses and individuals. Beyond that, we expect the rhetoric of the discussion in the US to be around global allegiances and deteriorating international relationships. And we believe this is going to define the Trump and Biden arm wrestle into the last couple of weeks of the election. On to trade tensions. We're keeping a very close eye on the Australian dollar in response to the ongoing developments between international relationships. Any further deterioration to these relationships will be a challenge for the Aussie dollar and other risk-based currencies. And the risk-off sentiment is something that has been seen throughout this calendar year, seeing gold prices rally 35% since the middle of March. These high prices have attracted significant global foreign investment into Australian local mining opportunities, which has given a strong bid for the Aussie dollar. And the correlation between iron ore prices and the Australian dollar is another story that continues, with global supply limitations, Brazil being the main driver of that, where they're 10% behind their forecasted year-to-date iron ore productions, means global purchases of iron ore have been looking at Australian iron ore, but it will be interesting to see if that trend continues when the global production lines are restored and whether Australian iron ore is still one of the preferred choices. So what does all of this mean for markets? Well, definitely the ongoing uncertainty, and it looks like there's a bit more volatility to come. So how can SMEs manage this volatility? There are a number of tools available, okay? And I'll go through some of the products and strategies with you now. One of the fundamental ways businesses can manage their FX exposure is through future contracts, or what's known as forward contracts. So these contracts look to lock in a future price today that manage your exposure over a given period of time. So it's a great way for businesses to manage their budget lines and their profit margins. we are seeing a trend in the market that more and more clients are looking for this type of solution, just given the level of volatility that we've seen so far this year. Outside of that, market orders or market or firm orders are what are commonly known as positions that are placed in the market to achieve a targeted rate or foreign exchange objective. So how these actually work is that you place an order into the market, and it doesn't matter what time of the day. If the market reaches that, the order is filled. And that's a guaranteed way for you to participate even outside of Australian business hours. It's a great tool to use because a lot of the liquidity actually happens outside Australian business hours into the European and US trading sessions. Local currency accounts are another trend uptake that we're seeing at the moment, where some businesses both have a requirement to receive and make payments in foreign currencies. So this is what can be known as a natural hedge if you put the strategy together correctly, where a business has a requirement to receive foreign currency and also make outward payment in that foreign currency. So a quick example that I can give to you today is you might be an exporter that receives US dollars, but you also have a requirement to make outward supplier payments in US dollars. Now, the US dollar depreciating against the AUD would be offset against the Australian dollar's purchasing power climbing against the USD. So if you're able to manage your cash flows and timings of the transfers that are coming in and out, you actually can negate the need to participate in the FX market altogether. Outside of this, we've got a team here in Australia, as do the World First offices around the world, of currency specialists, and they're on hand all day, every day, to give clients access to up-to-date market information and to help all of our clients navigate and execute any or some of these strategies that have been mentioned. We find our clients really appreciate having a point of contact that's just a phone call away to be able to be kept abreast of all market activity and movements with so much uncertainty and change happening around the world. So I'd like to go into a little bit more detail quickly around the World Account offering. So the World Account offering gives businesses access to local bank accounts in up to 10 different currencies. So what these account facility actually allows you to do is to collect, convert, hold, repatriate, make outgoing payments, manage your cash flows in up to 10 different currencies, all within one single easy to use online platform. So we're very excited this is coming to this product being brought to market, and we're also exceptionally excited with some further product enhancements just around the corner. So thank you all for listening, and I'll hand you back to Najib.
Well, thanks for that, Matt. That was really informative. And when I first started exporting in 1992, so yes, all of you are probably thinking I must have started when I was 10 years old. But, and we were exporting to the Middle East, and so we had to sell in US dollars. So I was thrown into the foreign exchange deep end like no tomorrow. And I have a question for you a little bit later on. But sticking with you, and I guess we can't really be talking about global trade right now without starting on the pandemic and how that's impacted some of your clients. So how have businesses you work with been impacted by the pandemic?
Yeah, so there's no doubt everybody's acutely aware that COVID-19 has had a huge impact on businesses within Australia and around the world. I think the trends across each of us are probably quite similar in the fact that clients in the tourism, hospitality and entertainment space are probably the ones suffering the most. But while we have seen other opportunities and expansion in wholesale food, medical goods and technology sectors. So I think the traditional bricks and mortar stores, we're seeing a big shift, a trend to trying to take their businesses online. And actually through the use of our World Account product is something that we've actively been trying to do with large segments of our book, just to try and find innovative ways to help our clients navigate some of the difficulties going on in the economy right now.
Great. Charith, for some of the clients that you work with, how has the pandemic impacted them?
Yeah, so it has certainly been an interesting year so far, as for everyone. As you know, Najib, so most of our customers either export a product directly or indirectly, and a lot of them manufacture products overseas. So initially, around February, March, our main concern, or the customer's main concern, was around, can we get product out of wherever we are manufacturing. So most of them manufacture in China and other parts of the world. So initially it was more a concern around, is there going to be a supply disruption? But that within a matter of weeks or days very quickly turned into a customer side or a buyer side issue as the virus moved from east to west and spreading everywhere very quickly. And we had customers who supply to large retailers in the US, for example, where the orders were starting to getting cancelled. Some goods were on the way or on a ship somewhere. So that was the initial experience that we had. So we've obviously worked with most of those customers to help from a cash flow point of view, or what that impact is going to be on the cash flows. And the old adage, cash is king. I think it has never been more important now than ever. So that was our initial initial feedback that we had. But then after that, we saw some companies who managed to pivot very quickly, then make use of opportunities. We had inquiries from, say, distilleries who are now looking to manufacture hand sanitizer for export. We had clothing companies that had taken up manufacturing PPE on nursing gowns and things like that. So it has been mixed, mostly impacted from a cash flow point of view on a negative way, but it has also opened up opportunities for certain businesses.
Listening to Matt and talking about e-commerce and facilitating easier payments through all the myriad of e-commerce platforms globally. Charith, have you seen anything with your clients, or any sort of, has there been an increase in requests to finance the development of e-commerce stores and things like that?
Yeah, so we've seen that a bit. Again, has been mixed. I guess mixed responses from the businesses, where some were exposed to Amazon, and then in the US, Amazon delayed deliveries of all non-essential products, and that impacted businesses. So that through those experiences, businesses then had to come up with their own online platforms, and at the same time, you were really not ready before the pandemic from an online point of view. And then we had a lot of businesses who really wanted to invest in developing a online strategy and developing a website, whether that's in US or the US market or in Europe, whatever the currency and the language it needs to be. So we've had some requests, and those are types of requests that we are willing to finance as well, subject to criteria, of course.
Right. Dianne, you've got such a large membership base, so this is probably a big question for you to ask, but are you seeing, what themes are you seeing coming from your members as a result of the pandemic?
It's been interesting. I mean, we're now into the 6th month or so of the pandemic, if you like, and we are at different stages of that crisis. But there were, many exporters, and we do tend to focus a lot of our attention at the Export Council of Australia on SMEs, and many SME exporters are struggling, but there's different experiences. Some are new to exporting and probably may not get back into it. They probably think it's all too hard. And some have made $1 million investments in their production, in their business, in their facilities, in all sorts of different ways over the last few years, and only to see that really be a negative thing for them over the last 6 or 7 months. Others have been in business for many years, but have still lost all their buyers. And I can tell you a lot of stories. We've spent so much time trying to ring all our members and people and businesses that wanted to talk to us as well. And the stories, they're some of them are interesting, and some have pivoted, if you like, and I don't like using that word too much, but some have looked at how they can do R&D on prototypes of different versions of what they normally do if we talk goods trade systems. But I mean, how do you pivoting from services, and we have to remember that 22% of our export numbers relate to services, and that's inbound education, that's tourism. It's a lot of different things, and that is, you know, the only way to make that work is you know, virtual and digitalization, and that doesn't happen overnight, and you still have to connect and make that work really well to get someone's attention. So, and tourism, it doesn't work. You know, it just doesn't work. So, you know, it's interesting. Others that have been in business, as I said, have lost all their buyers, and there's a story of a regional exporter, very well known, that has a product that they sell that they just cannot sell at the moment, and haven't had an order on their book since February. And they've taken to doing an R&D prototype of the actual system that they build. But the interesting thing is, and the really great thing I'd like to applaud them about, is that they have kept their staff. And that's, you know, I have to say the government has done some good stimuluses. I will say great, because without those stimuluses, there would be some worse situations. So JobKeeper in particular has enabled this particular business, and many others, I'm sure, to keep their staff on and to retain that knowledge. A lot of these exporters, if they lose their staff, how do they start again? They've got to build up that competency, that knowledge, all of those things. So, and then to be really fair here, there are some that have been really buoyant through this period. And I go to the product lines, you know, I suppose the food products, but not the bulk food products, the online food products, the pharmaceutical products, the nutrimedical type products, vitamins, all of the things that people do tend to buy online have skyrocketed, and they're doing pretty well, but that's not always the core of their business. And so they need to think about how that will continue as they move forward. There are many that have demands for their products, as I said, and others where their supply chains, even though they've got demand for their products, have just dried up. They're not able to get goods into Australia easily, or they're not able to connect with their supply businesses overseas who have maybe gone out of business. I mean, what's happening here is happening in every other country. So there's some really big issues that are starting to sort themselves out, but they're not going away, and they're still going to be there. One of the key problems has been the logistics. So everyone has heard, you know, about the planes and the freight and the difficulties in freight, and that's still there. The freight difficulties with air freight are still there. And now we have some difficulties which we did have at the beginning, but now we've got some more difficulties with sea freight, with containers piling up on wharves, particularly in Sydney at the moment. So it's not easy, but they're challenges. And a lot of our exporters are not talking about walking away. They're talking about, well, we just have to get through this, build up our supply chains, look at diversity in how we do things, look at different supply chains, look at different, you know, markets, different avenues of what we do. So I'm very happy with a lot of the comments we're getting back, but it is hard. It's very, very difficult, very difficult.
And we've both Charith and Matt have touched on e-commerce, and you've obviously spoken, and Charith spoke about the education industry being impacted, and of course you are in the education industry, I guess. The question I've got for you is, I know the Export Council of Australia has had sort of online training for a while, but perhaps the uptake wasn't as strong as what companies said it would have been, but now things are different. I mean, what's your experience there?
Well, I'd like to say that we pivoted when this all happened in February, March, but we'd actually taken a step last year to support and build a platform, an interactive platform. We are very much known at the Export Council as doing a lot of face-to-face training, a lot of in-house training, a lot of specialised training. And we don't tend to just do general training online. That has not been our focus over the 64 years that we've been involved and established. But we did decide last year that we needed to be able to reach regional Australia. And that's very hard, to go out to every part of Australia and try and get a group together to do training regularly. So we did take that view to do interactive training. We have developed some really good programs. And as I said, the AusVeg program was launched last night by the the Trade Minister some in Birmingham, and I'm very, very proud of that. We're doing a lot of that work, and we're actually, with the Women Trading Globally program that I talked about in my introduction, we're actually doing, because we can't bring women to Australia to do that program at the moment, we're doing virtual live training with these ladies online. I'm really proud of that as well. Doing it really well, I think.
Speaking of building capabilities, Matt, I'll come back to you and my earlier point that I had to learn about foreign exchange and moving money around the hard way. Lost money, occasionally fluked it and made a foreign exchange gain, but mostly made a foreign exchange loss. And I did the lazy thing and just used the services of the bank, which was one of the big four banks that we were banking with. Was not aware of other providers that are specialists in this field. Noting that World First is a specialist in this field. What advice do you give to export managers or anybody who's involved in international trade sitting in on this call around understanding what are the different services available?
Well, first and foremost, Najib, I'd advise them to give me a call. There's lots to talk about, and we're always happy to make sure that people are on track. But yeah, jokes aside, I think I'd highly encourage them to do just a general health check. It's what we call a health check. There are very quick ways to identify whether you're a valued customer of a bank or not. And some of the telltale signs are you being charged fees for your services? Do you have a dedicated account manager? Have you been introduced to products like forward contracts and market limit orders? And also, do you know what spread margin you're on? And often the answer is, if you don't know the answer to that question, you're probably not in the best space that you or your business could be. So I definitely encourage them to reach out and just do a general health check where we can actually go back and look at the most recent transactions, find the interbank price at the time you executed the trade, and tell you essentially what margin you're on. That margin will determine how much savings you may or may not be making, and it might just be the fact that you are actually in a good place, but at least you get the comfort of knowing that it's been independently reviewed and you're in a position where you're managing your payments that's cost effective and you're getting all the products and service that you think you need. But that's essentially my advice to managers. It's everybody thinks that they're doing it well until they find the alternative.
Yeah, I definitely found that. And for those of you that are wanting to ask Matt questions, there's the Q&A function at the bottom. I can already see a couple of questions which I'll bring up later on.
I see the lead in there, mate. I think the sales team will be happy with that one.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So Charith, what financial support is available for exporters? I mean, there are so many newsletters, emails, government announcements, policies, grants. I mean, it can get a little bit confusing. Are you able to demystify some of that and provide some clarity?
Sure. So just before I get into that, I thought it'll be useful just to look at three themes that I've seen from our customers, at least in terms of what type of finance are they looking for. So the three main things I've seen are a majority or a vast majority of them are looking for short-term working capital or liquidity to get through this period of COVID, whether that's through the bank or providers like ourselves. Secondly, we have seen businesses needing additional capital to pivot, whether that's setting up an online channel for their business or getting new equipment to do a new product that is now in demand. Example, PPP equipment, as I mentioned before. And the third one, which is interesting, only a minority at this stage in my experience, is companies who are in a stronger position, generally looking to have facilities in place so that when certain opportunities come up for them in the next 12 to 24 months, they are looking to acquire some of those business opportunities that may unfortunately not do as well as them over the next 12 to 18 months. So interesting scenarios, all three. Some looking to survive, or most looking to manage the cash flow and get to the other end. some really looking or planning ahead depending on how they are at the moment. So in terms of the financing we provide, so to address that first scenario, we provide short-term working capital. So especially if you have an export contract, but you only get paid after 6 months of having to deliver that, and that creates that 6 months gap that you need to fund. That's where we would typically come in. And we see that happening a lot now, where especially if you're manufacturing overseas, a lot of the suppliers are tightening their credit terms or asking for payment up front. But at the same time, depending on how big your customer is at the other end, whether they're in the US or Europe or wherever they are, they may want a longer time to repay because they're still going through shutdown periods or limited store openings or whatever that may be. So as an Australian exporter, you might be squeezed in the middle to fund a longer working capital cycle. So that's one. We also can then provide more medium to longer term funding if you need to invest in technology or equipment to ultimately increase exports or enter into a new market, for example. We can help with financing those. And then we also provide bank guarantees, performance bonds and warranty bonds and things like that, which are relevant in certain industries and not many. But so covering all that, Najib, you mentioned that there were various announcements. So one of them was the export capital facility, which we now have access to, where businesses can apply for loans between $250,000 up to $50 million, provided that they have been profitable leading up to COVID and then have been impacted by COVID and they need to sustain themselves over the next 12 to say 24 months, and then start to repay that facility back. Again, welcome anyone to reach out directly or make an inquiry, and happy to discuss circumstances. But there are many ways that we can help. So I'd rather keep that generic rather than getting into specific products.
That's really good. It's provided some clarity around how to think about what support is available. That's often that's the first step that's missing, and then people end up going down a rabbit warren of grants as opposed to really understanding what their need is. Dianne, given that this has a sort of a finance slant to it around global trade, a lot of people on this call are interested in the facts and figures, the stats. So what is happening, if you have it, what is happening, statistically for Australia?
Well, I do, and on the surface it looks okay. If you look at our last balance of trade figures that came out last month, we were still in the black, which is great. But if you delve deeper into the figures, Australian goods and services exports fell by 4% to around 34 billion. Now that sounds good, but it's a lot less than what we normally would have between June and July. And in particular, rural exports declined by 15% and services exports fell by 12%, remembering that that includes inbound tourism as well. And as you know, well, you may not know, everyone, but total exports declined by around 12%, or have declined by around 12% since the beginning of the year, between January and July. So we might still have, a balance of payment, and I'm very happy that we do, that's in the black. But it's a struggle, and you can see that there are issues. There are world issues, not just Australian issues, and there are many exporters struggling, due to COVID and the restrictive lockdowns. I suppose I might as well say that there's some issues there, but they're getting better, and we seem to be on the way out of a number of those, so that's good. Further, we have, we've got some impact of declining trade relationships with some trading partners overseas. And going back to some of the points that have been mentioned already, as I said, a lot of countries have similar problems, and a lot of companies in those countries have closed because of not being able to get some sort of stimulus, or not being able to get orders, or not being able to continue to stay open for whatever reason. So, overall, the Australian economy declined by 7% in the April-June quarter. It was the largest fall, and I'm sure we're all aware of this, since the Australian Bureau of Statistics began compiling records in 1959. Now, if that trend continues, it is a problem just within Australia, but also it's a problem meaning that our economic value and income from our international business will fall again. Because if we're losing, that sort of income and ability in Australia and work level, then it has to affect exports. It has to affect the way that we can get more exports out of Australia. It has to affect how much we're selling. And, I really hope that it doesn't come to a lesser figure again, but I think we need to be prepared that the next quarter figures are not going to be any better in any way. It's very, very important that we understand domestic consumer spending fell also in Australia by 12.7%, and it's unlikely to make any significant rebound. So that means that the people out of jobs, and we know that there's people not working in businesses or not doing the work in businesses that needs to be done to do export services or export trade goods. So I don't see that it's a good future in the very short term, but I know the Australian government, I know everyone involved in trade, every industry body, every government body is trying really hard to promote and help exporters do what they need to do to stay in business and to continue to trade, because trade is one way that I see as one of the most important ways I see as a recovery for Australia.
Oh, definitely. I mean, so we're going to have all these loans we're going to need to repay that we've needed to keep the economy going, and we need to bring the money in to pay it back. So trade is, growing the GDP is one part, and earning export dollars is another.
Yeah. I will just preface that by saying yesterday's news about all these figures, but these numbers will matter in the future. They will.
Yeah, totally. Matt, have you seen any currency be traded more than normal over the past few months? Have you seen any sort of knee-jerk reaction or anything like that happening?
So yeah, generally, mate, the trend that we have been seeing is with the risk off sentiment, which essentially means that the market participants are looking for less risky assets to move their funds into. So the beneficiaries of that are generally the Swiss franc and the Japanese yen. So that's where we've seen the trend of money out of commodity currencies or risk-based currencies like the Australian dollar and into some of those more safe haven currencies.
Right, okay. This is a question that we've received, and it's for both Charith and Dianne. Are there any export markets that are faring better now than, say, what they did this time last year? So, any potential target markets for Australian exporters that they should particularly look towards now, more so than this time last year? Charith, do you want to start with that?
Oh, Dan, sorry, no, you go, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Charith. Look, we all know that China is our major trading partner. 33% of our exports go to China, and they still will go to China, and we would support that very much. But I think what this situation in the last 6 or 7 months has done is it's made everyone aware that they need to have, and I don't like using this word too much, but diversity, strength in what they're doing and not put all their eggs in one basket. So I think this is the time, and that wasn't quite the question you asked, but I think it's better of me to sort of say where I think people should be considering what they do, not necessarily a country. All countries have gone through COVID, basically. And we have, next door to China, we have the ASEAN region, and it's bigger than China in total. So there are lots of countries that we can go to. I mean, we have free trade agreements with Indonesia. Now they're going through a very serious situation with COVID at the moment. But the Indonesian, free trade agreement was signed on the 5th of July. And I think we really need to consider that is a really vast opportunity for Australia to consider in regards to export, both in services and in goods trade. India, I actually think that is a really great untapped market that we really haven't concentrated enough on. The Australian government recently signed a strategic economic agreement with India with 9 MOUs that relate all the way down from economics, strategy, defense, climate change, right through. If everyone is interested in learning about different countries, looking at that strategic agreement and the 9 MOUs is really worthwhile, because there's lots of opportunities there. I see, and Najib, in areas that you probably are quite involved in now, the ag tech area and those sorts of things. I think, we need to look at digitally still being able to do that, virtually still being able to sell products overseas, and looking at countries that can take some digital services at the moment, even if it's not goods trade, but also build up a relationship with as many countries as we can. Although I'm the first to say, Najib, you shouldn't also go out and try every country at the same time. I think we should broaden our horizons, purely because we don't know what the future is going to bring us in any country that we deal with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is what we're seeing in our work as well, like at Export Connect, is businesses still toiling away in trying to make China succeed, but actually looking towards other markets. And ASEAN and the Middle East are the 2 markets that have really sort of seem to be markets of focus for at least in the food and agri sector. Yes. Charith, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think Dianne covered it well. I was going to mention Indonesia as well, but compared to last year, so we also have Hong Kong and Peru new free trade agreements that came into force this year. So obviously it depends on the type of product or service that you export. So Peru might be not relevant to some businesses, but more relevant to the others. So in addition to Indonesia, we also see the Pacific as a focus. So I think there's plenty of opportunities in our neighborhood itself. And I would like to stretch our neighborhood up to India and to Dianne's point as well. So yeah, between APAC and India, as been mentioned before, there's plenty of opportunities. So we see that companies have begun or started realizing that and begun pursuing some of those opportunities already.
Matt, I read the other day that President Trump was threatening to decouple the US dollar from the Chinese yen. What does that actually mean? Practically, what does that mean? Because I can't get my head around that. And what will it mean to Australian businesses if that actually happens?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And it's actually a spider web for even those closer to it to unravel. But essentially what it will do is it'll really take away what's underpinned a large part of the global interconnected financial system. China also hold a significant amount of US dollar currency reserves. So in terms of what that actually means, well, it's a spider web and just a downward vortex about what stability actually exists within the financial system. So I think it's more of a cheeky little haymaker rather than actually anything too tangible.
So if an Australian business that was exporting products to China currently selling in US dollars, that wouldn't happen if they actually followed through with that threat.
So what it would be is, so if you had an Australian exporter that was selling to China and China were taking part of those foreign reserves to make payment to it, that for me would actually operate as normal, but the valuation of the purchasing power parity of the US dollar might be the question. And if the US dollar is the global currency that has underpinned all of the other global currencies, but there is suggestion that it might not be the economic superpower moving forward, well, that might just change the market's view on and the valuation of what the US dollar actually holds.
Wow. Okay, and so let's put the crystal ball out there. Australia-US pairing. Where do you see the dollar being at the end of the year?
I'm glad you've asked, Najib. The crystal ball question always comes up, but and essentially, Matt, I think if I knew the answer, we'd be doing this webinar from a nice yacht somewhere off the coast of the Mediterranean. But to answer your question, and all jokes aside, it's a very challenging one to answer. Generally speaking, we're actually the commentary around it is that fundamental analysis and ways that we try to forecast where currency movements are going to be are playing second fiddle to the general market sentiment. So ongoing developments of COVID and the deteriorating relationships, or the way that the relationships will unfold between, you know, major trading partners, the UK, Europe, China and the US tensions, that will all essentially determine the market and risk sentiment. But generally speaking, where it's a very challenging question to answer. But we have actually broken the resistance of the 73. So the Aussie US dollar has settled above 73. It has actually breached 74 a little bit earlier this year. So it has shown, there has been a lot of support for the Aussie dollar, and that might be the way that it'll continue.
All right, good. Well, and I think not long after the Parramatta Eels won all those premierships in the 80s, the dollar had a bit of a slide down to 50 cents. I think looking at the Roosters jersey there, I think we should be rooting for the Eels to win, and we'll see that the dollar slide will be good for the exporters.
I was just going to say, Najib, if no exporter likes to see it go up, none, no.
That's right.
Well, we've got the Australian Rugby Sevens jersey behind. That might be a better colour match for the Eels, mate. But I'm not sure there's too much correlation between football and currency. But I think we'll do some research and we'll get back to you.
All right, thank you. So, well, look, thank you so much for all your insights. You've all been very generous with your time and your experience and knowledge. Much appreciated on behalf of everybody at PIT and those sitting in on the webinar. Alex, if you're still there, if you'd like to open your video and close.
Thank you, Najib, and yeah, a few closing remarks. Thank you again to all our panelists, Dianne, Charith, and Matt, for a very informative session. And thank you especially to Matt from Wolfers for your support for this event. Just a quick reminder, if I can get my slide on. Yes, so we have a bit of a news. We have started a new LinkedIn group to continue the discussion and to engage more with our members on the topics that we address during those events. So I believe we have shared a link to join this LinkedIn group, so don't hesitate to go there and post some of the feedbacks from the session or any link that you think could be valuable to continue on the conversation. And if you have any questions around our memberships, feel free to reach out also to our head of memberships, Hubert Basquin, who will take a pleasure in helping you with joining the group. On that note, we are recording the session, so we will be sharing those, the recording and the slides as well as the presentation further later this week, sorry. And yeah, if you have any questions or suggestions for future events, don't hesitate to reach out to any of the PIT team members. And on that note, I wish you everyone a very good afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Najib.